Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, your one and only home for all Oakland University Golden Grizzly sports. My name is Giovanni Mosheri, and I'll be your host for today as usual. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the GioMoShow to help support what we do here in covering the Golden Grizzlies. Right in the middle of basketball season, and we'll be covering it all the way until it's hopefully extended and in March, hopefully extended, of course, into the conference and NCAA tournament. So be sure to subscribe to not miss a bit of the basketball action. And you can use the hashtag #TheGioMoShow to get involved with the show on social media, and that social media you can find here at the GioMoShow. On Instagram is where you can follow and get all the up-to-date releases and news in regards to the show. And you can follow me on Twitter as well at GioMosheri, WXOU. If you're watching on YouTube, it's on your screen now, and it's in the description of not only the YouTube release, but of every podcast platform as well. Just scroll down to get all your JoMo info. So for today, as usual as it's been for the past couple of weeks, we got just basketball to talk about. I believe there's swim and dive on the horizon for next week, but of course we'll get to that in next week. But just basketball for today, and we got 4 games to cover. The usual 2 games a week for each, the men's and the women's, and we'll cover all of them here on the GioMoShow. A bit of a turning point this week for both teams. For the men's team, a little bit of a turning point in the positive direction, but for the women's team, a bit of a turning point in the negative direction. And we'll break that all down here on the GioMoShow. And before we get started there, I wanted to give another shout out to the watch party that we had at Grizzlies last Thursday when the men's team was on the road at Dayton, Ohio. I'm so thankful for all of you that showed up. We had WXOU stop by. We had Women's Club Soccer stop by, as well as a whole bunch of you from Oakland University's campus. It was so much fun to do that show. We got a lot to learn for next week. And, to kind of make this the first subject of the show, just want to talk about my experience with that. And it was strange because it was my first it was my first live event like that. Usually, when you do the recorded podcast like this, or you do the live radio show from WXOU, it's all ran by me. There's not as much of a feedback aspect to it, but of course when I'm in the public setting, I'm in the public view, and kind of I'm a piece of the atmosphere as opposed to the entire chosen atmosphere of the audience. So it became a balance, a delicate dance to find my spot and to find where I would fit in to the Grizzlies atmosphere. Am I going to be announcing something for every score? Am I only going to be doing stuff in between timeouts? But if I do it the one way, is it too much silence? And there's a whole balance to it. And will people understand what I'm doing, why I'm hosting, where to find me? There was a lot of pieces to it that had to be orchestrated to make sure that it was a good show. And there were some improvements to be made for next week. We'll be doing it next Saturday when Oakland is on the road at Detroit Mercy. So we'll be running it back, new and improved. So be sure to stop by Grizzlies next Saturday. That'll be released on their Instagram and, of course, the GioMoShows in due time this week. Keep an eye out for that. But a lot to improve on, and it's going to be an improved show for next week. But doing live events it's a much different, totally different animal than doing the show in the way I usually do it. But it's still a lot of fun. You don't get that kind of feedback from the YouTube videos or the podcast release. Like to get the crowd cheering and clapping in tight moments to add a little suspense to it. Like it's a lot of fun. It's very fulfilling to do, and there's a different dimension to it, a different way to promote the show, a different way to promote Oakland sports, and especially at Grizzlies, a place where it lives and breathes Oakland sports as well as Detroit sports. I'm a personal fan of that place, of that restaurant, their food, their service. Like I'm not kidding. Like I wouldn't do a show there if I didn't like the place, and I do really like the place. So it's overall a very good experience, and I'm looking forward to doing the future shows and newing and improving those shows. So that'll wrap up my thoughts for the Grizzlies one again this Saturday. That's the 18th when Oakland is on the road at Detroit. Be sure to stop by Grizzlies Bar and Bistro for the live watch party hosted by yours truly from the GioMoShow. So to transition from the live show about Oakland at Wright State, let's now talk about Oakland at Wright State, the game. So for this one, it was a disappointing loss, but in a similar fashion that we've seen Oakland do in the past this season. So it was a masterful start for Oakland to get a huge lead in this game and to really grab and hold on tightly to control in the first half at least. I made 3 keys to the game when I was doing the live show. Key 1 was to neutralize Noel, whatever. At Christmas time, it's Noel. Brandon Knoll, of course, the predicted player of the year, the number 1 scorer in the league, the number 1 guy in the Horizon League. The first key was to neutralize him, similar to what we did in the previous matchup in the arena where he only had 6 points. The second key to it was to not allow a school record in 3-pointers made in a single game. That's what happened when they were in the arena. They made 16 of 31 from 3. School record and incredibly efficient while doing it. Second key was to not let that happen again. Third key was to control the tempo in a similar way that got us the win against Milwaukee at home to start off the new year. So neutralize Noel, limit the threes, and control the tempo. Oakland did all 3 of those things beautifully in the first half. They held Wright State to 1 of 7 from beyond the arc. They held Brandon Noel to only three shots taken. I think he only had 4 points in that first half, and he finished with right around there. Yeah, Brandon Noel, he finished with 8 points, but not a lot of shots taken, not a lot of opportunities either. So Noel was neutralized. The 3 was neutralized, and Oakland's defense was insane. That got them a big first half lead that would shrink before they would go right into the tunnel. So at first, Oakland was up by as much as 13 with 10.5 minutes left to go in the first half. But then we started to lose the grip a little bit. We started to ease up. We started to allow, stuff that wasn't allowed in the first 10 minutes that would allow Wright State to gain the momentum, swing it back their way before they go into their home tunnel, cut the lead to 5. 28-23 was the halftime score. And then in the second half, Wright State just turned on the Jets. Wright State would score 43 points in the second half alone. And in that second half, there were 6 of 16 from beyond the arc. So they blew the roof off the place in the second half. It was still a very tight game at the very end, though. Oakland was able to hang on long enough to make it within the last minute, the deciding factor in the game. But Oakland, while they did also improve the scoring, they just couldn't hold it together. There were some last minute kind of mistakes and stuff. Couldn't make shots late, and it just wasn't enough. We gave the game away was what we walked away with the feeling of. Campy felt the same way. Campy obviously not happy with how it ended because of how similar it was to their previous games, where against we'll go back to the Diamond Head Classic. They had a big lead against Loyola Chicago, let them back in, and was barely able to escape that at the last second for a win. The following game against Oregon State, they had a big lead, and then it completely flipped away. Last second dumb mistakes cost the game. Same thing against Hawaii that led that game into overtime, and we couldn't do it in overtime. There's multiple examples. Michigan State also an example of that, where Oakland had control, can get the lead, but can't quite keep it. And that's what we walked away from that game with. Campy at the post game described the offense truthfully and agreeably for me, described the offense as, quote, awful. You can hold the team to 66, but you can't score 66. It's a big problem. Oakland averages around maybe 64 points a game at this point. That's bad. That's pretty bad. And it's just, it's a constant theme throughout this season. The defense is so good to where the offense, it's not only highlighted, but it's just so much more disappointing. It's just what's strange with basketball. especially compared to football, where in basketball you can kind of understand, like, okay, the team might be good on defense but not as well on offense because it's the same 5 guys going around, compared to football where it's completely different squads, where in football, I don't know why you can't have a good defense and a good offense. A lot of times it's, sometimes they take the character of one of them, but for basketball, it's different in that you have the guys that could do the great skill, that great skilled stuff on defense, but like, why can't you do it on offense too? You're good players, you're good basketball players, and it just doesn't translate on the offensive side. Even if we scored, I would like to run the numbers. If we scored 70 a game, that's not even that big in the Horizon League. If we scored 70 points a game, I would like to see what our record would be. I'm going to go find that out, and I'll put the number up in the blinds here. I would imagine it's a lot better of a record than we have right now, and we would be a lot higher in the league right now if that were the case. I'm at least going to look at the Horizon League statistics. Where would 70 points a game put Oakland in, compared to the rest of the Horizon League? It would put us at 7. It would put us at 8th in scoring in the league. So that, you don't even have to be that good on offense, but you got to be better than this. 65.1 points per game as of Monday afternoon. It's not good enough, man. You got the talent to do it. And it's so frustrating that it just can't be put together. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself because we still got another game to talk about. One that kind of washes the bad taste out of your mouth. What could potentially be that turning point in the men's basketball season that I was talking about. But let's get into the box score of Wright State first. Box score highlights. You had Baru Navalorua, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds, and was 6 of 12 from the floor. Classic Baru, basically. And Mukeba, bit of a similar stat line. 13 points, 9 rebounds, 5 of 9 from the floor. Both Baru and Mukeba, not perfect. 4 of 7 from the line, 3 of 4 from the line for Baru and Mukeba, respectively, but they were at least able to get to the line. So you got your 2 big guys getting the double-digit points at least. Isaiah Jones would be the third Golden Grizzly. 10 points, 5 rebounds on 4 of 11 from shooting. Not a good shooting night for Isaiah, but was still able to get to double digits. Looking at Oakland's overall stats, 5 of 22 from 3. Now, Oakland, as bad as Wright State was from 3 in the first half, Oakland was at least able to pretty much match it, where, like I said, we held Wright State in the first half, 1 of 7 from 3. Oakland, 1 of 9 from 3. So it's like, great, at least we're bad at 3-point shooting together, right? That would not be the case. So Oakland was 1 of 9 from 3 in the first half, 4 of 13 in the second half. Yeah, that's improvement, 11% to 30%, but that ends up with 22.7%. Meanwhile, you go to Wright State, 1 of 7 from 3 to start in the first half, and then 6 of 16 in the second half. They would end up with 30% from 3. I would like to be 30% from 3, personally. But either way, that's the case. So checking out Wright State's box score, Jack Dombia, 16 points, 6 rebounds, 7 of 10 from the floor. Keaton Norris, 4 of 6 from 3. Most of that came in the second half, obviously, for 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals for the guard. And then Alex Hubricks was held to 11 points, made only 2 of 9 from 3. But a few free throws would get him to the double-digit mark. And I want to go back down to Brandon Noel, 8 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. He would make a 3. He was efficient in the 3 shots he took. 2 of 3 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3, and 3 of 4 from the line. So he was efficient. It's a very efficient 8 points, but you held an over 19 points a game scorer, the number 1 in the league, to 8 points. That's, especially in Dayton, Ohio, you would hope that would lead to a win, because Oakland has really, what are the numbers? So 8 points and 6 points. You make the top scorer average 7 points against you, and you split the series. Both were really close. Both were really close games at the end. It's just so frustrating. But let's move on to their following game. Part 2 of the toughest road trip in the Horizon League. From Dayton, Ohio, they go to Northern Kentucky, where Oakland would almost repeat the way the Wright State game went until they didn't, in a good way. Let's break it down here. So the biggest headline going into this game, which occurred right before tip-off, or at least was announced right before tip-off, Malcolm Christie hurt his hand and was in a splint. I don't know if it was from practice. I don't know what it was from or when it happened. But the big news was that before tip-off, he was not able to play with an injured hand. So that kind of forced Oakland's hand a little bit. With Chang Hoff hurting his Achilles, and Jeremiah Bembry, I believe, also being hurt or not available for whatever reason, I forget. But the only option left pretty much was to take Jack Hoff off of the red shirt. And that's a tough decision. It's a tough thing to ask of one of your young players, one of your players that could be huge in this league, but may not be physically ready for it yet, and especially on short notice in one of the toughest places to play, or at least the toughest teams to play in the league. It's a lot to ask. So Campy asked Jack if he could come off the red shirt, but it was ultimately his decision, and Jack ultimately decided to come off of the red shirt with only about 14 games left in the season. Cost him one of his years of eligibility, but still was able to help out the team. So he came off the red shirt. He played significant minutes, 23 minutes, and would get the start against Northern Kentucky. And he was, especially for his first game, was wonderful. It was awesome to see. We'll break it down a little bit more as we go on, but I want to get into the game flow of things. So, like I mentioned at the start of this, it was really similar to how Wright State started. Oakland, big lead, had control of the game, was holding some of the best players in the league to very poor shooting, and had control of the game. Defense, holding back the other team's threes, tempo control, we had it all. But you really felt it kind of slipping away. Oakland had a 17-point lead in the first half. And then the wheels started to come off. And a few minutes going into halftime, the 17-point lead was cut to 9 just before halftime. And Campy was pissed. Campy, his hair was on fire. I could hear it through the radio broadcast. Neil asked one question, and Campy just was spitting hot lava. He was saying, that's why we can't win. We don't know how to win. We're good when it doesn't matter, but when it does matter, we do stupid things, and so on and so forth. He was furious at the performance at the end of the first half. And the first few minutes of that second half were not much better. That lead would end up being cut to 5, part of it being an opening play by Northern Kentucky, a slam dunk. Embarrassing. That was a calculated mess with your mental kind of move there. Because I got to imagine that the word out in the Horizon League is that if you come back against this team, they will not fight back. You have to take the first punch, but if you punch back, you're in, and you're going to win. I got to imagine that was the read on Oakland coming into this game and throughout much of the season, and that's what Northern Kentucky was trying to do, especially with that first play of the second half being that dunk. They wanted to hurt the mental side of Oakland. But then what Campy calls the play of the game occurred. Northern Kentucky cut it to 5 points. Not much left before Oakland would start to lose the lead, and we can't really get it back once we lose it. Until freshman Nassim Mashour. Final seconds in the shot clock. Gets the 3 off in the corner and is fouled. Gets the free throw. 4-point play to reload Oakland's lead. And that's really what kept it alive for Oakland. Northern Kentucky was not really able to recover after that, and Oakland maintained their squeezing grip on the lead and in the game. Oakland would come away with this one 68-53, a 15-point win at Northern Kentucky to basically keep the season alive in their pursuit of a top 4 spot in the Horizon League tournament. It was looking grim at first. And especially hearing Neil in the broadcast, there was the aspect of Oakland was really not getting a lot of calls, especially towards the end of the first half. It's just the fouls started even, and then they became more favored to Northern Kentucky. And it was, especially for the guys down low, it was a freaking bar fight under the basket. It was so physical and a bit grabby at times. And Mukeba and Baru were just, it was a fist fight essentially in the paint. But we were still able to hold on to it. And what ended up being, the ideal, the best case scenario for how Oakland can play given how the offense is. Get the lead and just hold on tight. Don't give up the lead because we don't have the offense to be able to come back from that. We run the ball and we play defense. That's the Oakland Golden Grizzlies this season. And then what we learned in the post-game interview with Campy on the radio broadcast was that the locker room at the end of the game, at the end of the first half, at halftime, Campy said that's a locker room reminiscent of a long time ago, which was his way of saying that he was MFing and screaming and yelling at his players. That it was old school, what the F are we doing kind of stuff. He didn't get specific, but he said if my bosses were in the room, I would have been fired. So some old school talk going on at halftime would eventually seep in to Oakland. Again, first few minutes of that second half, not quite, but it did end up catching up with the play of the game, Nassim Mashour's 4-point play to keep the multi-possession lead alive. So Oakland now it's still uncomfortable in the Horizon League standings. It's still like 3-4 is not a great start, but it's not the worst either. It could be it could be worse. It could be better as well. So 3-4 is where Oakland stands. Let's go over the box score before we get into the current Horizon League standings and the notable shifts in the league. So DQ Cole, he would start off pretty good in this game, especially from 3. We haven't seen a lot from DQ Cole as of late. They're, one of their more recent games, I believe it was the one against Robert Morris last week. The flu was going around the team, and he was only able to play a few minutes because he was sick as a dog. But even in games before, we just had been missing that the spark plug aspect of DQ's game, where it's just, he's the Energizer Bunny, can score in bunches quickly. We were missing a little bit of that, but we found it today as he would score 16 points on 5 of 13 from the field, 4 of 11 from 3. So a lot of 3-pointers going off for DQ Cole on his way to 16 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, and a steal as well. Baru with Nassim Mashour's 4-point play of the game, but the cool play of the game was Baru's tomahawk put-back dunk off of a rebound from Woodrich. Woodrich fired a 3. It bounced just the right way, and Baru came from the left of baseline, right-hand tomahawk dunk to put it back in. That one was sick. And Baru was only 1 field goal off of another perfect game. 15 points on 7 of 8 from the field, and another crazy play. So Baru had, I'm remembering now, not only did he have the tomahawk dunk, but he had a buzzer-beating corner 3 in the first half. It was awesome. Part of when Oakland was building their lead was just the possession was weird, and Oakland couldn't find anybody, and then the last second they give it to Baru. The corner, he's like, oh no! And he fires a 3 and makes it. It was freaking awesome. We've seen that. That's not the only time we've seen it from Baru, because the dude could just do it all. And he's always just very cool about it. He's very cool about it. And I remember that play because he was 1 of 1 from 3 in this game on his way to 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists as well. Isaiah Jones, 10 points, 3 of 8 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, So not a good shooting night, but 4 or 5 from the line, along with 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals. That's an Isaiah Jones box score. And then Mukeba would be held to 8 points, also 3 of 8 from the floor, but 12 rebounds would be had by the big man, as well as a block. And finally, Jack Hoth. I told you guys I would get to it, and now we finally get to it. How did Jack Hoth play in this game? If you watched it, you know. But 2 of 8 from 3. That doesn't sound good. But when those 2 threes occurred was big. It was like the opening minute of the game. Jack has the start. The dude is a toothpick. I'll be honest. Him and his brother were supposed to take this season and kind of get to a Division I size. He's a toothpick. However, the first 3 that he attempted in the first few minutes, nothing but net. That would get things started. And then another 3 would happen, I believe, in the second half. That would be another one of those like breath of fresh air for Oakland as they were trying to maintain their lead. So crucial points for Jack Hoth to get the 3. And it's his first game in Division I. It's the first time he's played live game action. He was a redshirt. He wouldn't even have played in garbage time minutes. But his first minutes on the court in Northern Kentucky, in a basically do or die game for Oakland in terms of the standings and the conference record, he did very well. And it was awesome to see. He was him and his brother were some of the top scorers in JUCO last year, 40% from 3 the past 2 years. Like that, the dude is nuclear, and he was able to at least show signs of it at NKU. So Oakland's overall stats, they led for a documented 99% of the game. Northern Kentucky did not have a lead all game long. Largest lead was of 20 points. Oakland would also dominate on the boards. 42 rebounds to Northern Kentucky's 27. 20 offensive rebounds. It was freaking sweet. Meanwhile, Northern Kentucky, Sam Vincent and I forget his first name, Jake Dilling of Northern Kentucky, both getting double digits. Sam Vincent was 4 of 9 from the field, but not good from 3. Northern Kentucky overall was 7 of 29 from 3, and Campy described it as Campy said that they shoot threes like we do, they shot threes like we do today. So they kind of swapped places from 3. Second half, they were 1 of 11 from 3. So Oakland doing a great job doing what they do. Play defense, hold on, and be strong on the inside. That was a game plan. That's what happened. And Oakland gets the win and splits the tough road trip at Wright State and at Northern Kentucky. Looking at the standings from last week, Oakland came into this week 2-3 and would leave it 3-4, but holding in the same spot at 8th place. Meanwhile, at the top of the league, first place is now crowned to Cleveland State, as they are now 6-1 in the conference, knocking Youngstown down to the 3rd spot. Purdue Fort Wayne jumps from that's the 5th place. They jump to the 2nd. And then Milwaukee dropping from 2nd to 4th. This is hard to describe auditorily, but a lot of shifts going on at the top half of the league, not so much at the lower half, but basically the highlights are Cleveland State jumping 2 spots, Youngstown State dropping those 2 spots, and Purdue Fort Wayne jumping up 3 spots. A lot of shifting going on in the Horizon League. Top 3 teams have 6 wins in conference out of either 7 or 8 games. So it's a long climb. 4th place right now is Milwaukee. They have 5 wins. We have 3. So already a 2-game distance this early in the conference season, and it's not so much early in the season anymore. A lot of ground to gain to get to that 4th spot that Oakland's been wanting all season long. That's been the goal, and it's going to be a little bit tougher, but that win against Northern Kentucky is going to be nice. So this coming week, Oakland will be playing in the arena at home January 15th against IU Indy, and then we'll be traveling on the road at Detroit Mercy. Saturday, 1 p.m. Again, we'll be at Grizzly's Bar and Bistro hosting the watch party January 18th, 1 p.m. tip-off. Pre-game show a few minutes before that, so be sure to get there before tip-off and get to know the Titans this year and get to know the matchup and get to know your host here. We're going to be at Grizzly's. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you guys can make it. The deal is they do it for most of the game days. $3 beers, $3 bottles, I should say, $4 shots, $5 cocktails, BOGO boneless wings. And I'll tell you, the wings are really good. I love those wings. And I'm not saying that I'm genuinely saying that. They got great food over there. So definitely going to be a great spot to get your game day goodness. Saturday, 1 p.m. tip-off, Oakland at Detroit Mercy. So we'll take a break here on the GioMoShow. Long segment here for men's basketball as we usually get into, but we got women's basketball coming up next. As you know, they played the upcoming schedule that Oakland men's team is going to be playing. They played at home against IU Indy, and then they traveled on the road to Callahan Hall for the Titans. We'll go over those games right here on the GioMoShow. Don't go anywhere. Women's basketball is next. Welcome back, everybody, to the GioMoShow. Let's get into women's basketball. So the big headline for this one, they played at home against IU Indy and then on the road against Detroit Mercy. But the big standout headline for this week was Aliyah McQueen got her revenge against Oakland. Oh, my. Saturday afternoon at Callahan Hall was a big old revenge game for the former Golden Grizzly, now on the Titans. I believe she was previously on the Titans as well. Like, a lot of Horizon League history for Aliyah McQueen. But before that occurred, at home last Wednesday against IU Indy would be an unfortunate loss for the Golden Grizzlies, a game that should have been won given IU Indy's current standings coming into the game and given how Oakland performed in the first half, a game that kind of got away from us. Fortunately, I didn't get to watch this game. I didn't get to go to this game. It was my nonna's birthday, okay? Relax. Nonna's birthday takes precedent over everything. Understand that. You're talking to an Italian boy here. No, Nonna gets her birthday, and I get to look at the box score for the home game against IU Indy. So final score is 79-73. Oakland takes a loss against the Jaguars, but they had such a strong first half that that's what makes me say it's the one that got away. So Oakland, like I mentioned, would be up big and up early. 21-9 after the first quarter. Oakland up by 12 points after the first 10 minutes. The lead would be shrunken down before halftime, but still Oakland up by 7, 42-35 by halftime. But then in the second half comes around and the Jaguars defense is bolstered, performing a lot better, and they would be able to close the gap to 6 points by the first media timeout, and then they would go on an 11-0 run in that second half to make it 48-47 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. So IU Indy is on our tail, and they're hot doing it. Then the Jaguars would end up getting the lead 59-52 by the end of the third quarter, and then they would just grow their lead from 7 points to 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Up 12 points with 3 minutes left, and it was just too much for Oakland to overcome. So a strong first half and a weak second half for Oakland would spell a loss against the 3-4 IU, or I believe they were 2-4 at the time. IU Indy was 2-4 at the time. They would get the upset win against the, at the time, 4-1 Golden Grizzlies. So that one's tough to see, especially since with the way the standings were working, is that there's a lot of wins in the top half and there's very few in the bottom half. Oakland was able to be with that 4-0 start up near the top of the league, hoarding a lot of those wins, and it's about a two game gap between the 6th place team, Youngstown State, and the 5th place team, Oakland, 2-3 and 4-1 respectively. So when you go up against a 2-4 team, you expect yourself to be vaulted into the 5-win category. That would get you the jump over 4th place Green Bay and 3rd place Detroit Mercy. You would be in the top 3 in according to last week's rankings, standings. But unfortunately, we just weren't able to get it done, especially at home. That's the biggest part. To have that happen at home is just tough. That's one you could really use to make yourself a case for a top 4 team. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But unfortunately, there's not good news to follow that, as their trip against Detroit Mercy would be even tougher. So I mentioned the big headline for that one was Alliant McQueen. Oh, by the way, 19 points for Skorupski. All right, no, that was spoiling the Detroit game. It would be 25 points for Skorupski against IU Indy and 23 for Macy Smith, with being the only Golden Grizzlies in double digits. So now let's get into the Detroit Mercy game. I just want to make sure I get the box score, big scores out there. But for the game at Callahan Hall, by the way, great halftime interview by Kara Wolf-Bauer, interviewing Grizz and I think it's Tim, the mascot of Detroit Mercy. She interviewed two rival in-state mascots at halftime. It was awesome. But either way, a bit of a game of charades for the interview. But it was a pretty even matchup for Oakland and Detroit. But you could tell UDM was just not making anything easy for Oakland on the defensive side of things. Detroit's defense was pretty darn tough, but Oakland was able to keep a little bit of a possession throughout the game. Oakland was able to stay in this, but midway through, Detroit would make a 12-0 run that would give them the lead. And the way the defense was playing, it didn't look like Oakland would be able to recover from that. A 12-0 run at that point looked like it would have buried Oakland early. I believe this was in the second quarter that this happened. But Oakland would come out of a timeout with an 8-0 run themselves to keep it alive. But ultimately, that 12-0 run midway through the game would be the end for Oakland. We were not able to ever get the lead back. And Detroit Mercy would get now their second win in the past 10 matchups. I think it's their second in a row in the Metro Series rivalry, because Oakland was 9-1 in the past 10 coming into this matchup, but Detroit Mercy, I believe, has won the last 2 of them. And Alliant McQueen was a monster in this game. Holy smokes. She had a double-double with 2 minutes. She had a double-double 2 minutes after halftime. She had 8 rebounds in the first quarter. It was she was unbelievable. She would finish with the insane stat line of 21 points. She made 3 3-pointers and grabbed 17 rebounds. 21 and 17 in a revenge game against the Golden Grizzlies, and she wasn't even the leading scorer. O'Brien, 23 points, would make 4 3-pointers, make 7 free throws with 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. Whew. A lot of action going on for Detroit in that game. They would out-rebound the Golden Grizzlies 46-36, and that out-rebounding all coming on the offensive glass. They were even at defensive rebounds, but 19 offensive rebounds for Detroit against Oakland's 9 would be huge. They also had a 5-turnover advantage against the Golden Grizzlies. It was when Detroit turned it on, they didn't turn it off. Meanwhile, Oakland's box score highlights 19 points for Maddie Skorupski, who was held to 3 points at halftime. And it's sad to say that a lot of the points that she did end up scoring were in garbage time, or when the game was clearly out of reach towards the fourth quarter. But 19 points in total, 0 of 5 from 3, but made 7 of 9 free throws, 3 rebounds, a steal, and a block. Macy Smith would be held to 10 points, 1 of 6 from 3. Oakland overall was 4 of 19 from 3, 21% from deep, 39% from the field. The Detroit defense was nuts. And going back to the 3-point shooting, Oakland in the second half didn't make a single one. 0 and 9 from deep in the second half after being 4 of 10 at halftime. Not bad, but completely shut down from deep in that second half against the Titans. Oakland's largest lead would only be 4 points midway through the first quarter. And like I mentioned, man, Detroit buried them early. And Detroit is a pretty darn good team this year. And we kind of knew that going in, but yikes, that was rough. So for your Horizon League standings, Oakland remains at 5th place. They came into the week 4-1. Losing 2 games puts them at 4-3 now. And the standings are pretty much the same. Purdue Fort Wayne at the number 1 spot. Green Bay would move up to 2nd place. Cleveland State drops down to 3rd. And Detroit Mercy dropping down to 4th place. So it's 5 wins. Oh my God, I'm looking at Purdue Fort Wayne. They're 8-0 in the league. So 8-0 for Purdue Fort Wayne, 6-1 for Green Bay, 5-2 for Cleveland State, 5-2 for Detroit Mercy, and 4-3 for Oakland. So Oakland 1 game out of the top 4. And again, that's like Detroit Mercy is very good, but that win against IU Indy, man, would have been so good for this. I mean, that would have put Oakland at also 5-2, and they're at least at the tiebreaker to get into the top 4. But to have an upset loss like that, that's tough sledding, man. That is tough sledding. But either way, 4-3 is the conference record, 5th place in the league, and their upcoming games will be on the road in Wisconsin. Thursday, January 16th, they'll be at Milwaukee, and January 18th, that Saturday, they'll be at Green Bay. So that'll close things out here for us on the GioMoShow, and I've also just received the graphic for the watch party at Grizzlies this Saturday at 1 p.m. for the men's basketball game against Detroit Mercy. Just got sent the graphic here. We'll have it on screen once again for the YouTube watch, but hope you guys are going to be able to make it out to that one. It should be a lot more fine-tuned and refined of a show this time. Really looking forward to see what we can do to improve the show, keep the vibes going in the rivalry matchup between the Titans and the Golden Grizzlies at Grizzlies. It's going to be so much fun. Hope you guys can make it. So that's going to wrap it up here for the GioMoShow. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., for more weekly coverage of the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. Keep an eye out for the game reviews. Coming out later this week, I'll have Matt Dudek of the Horizon Roundtable returning to discuss the men's weekend at Wright State and at Northern Kentucky. We'll get the Horizon Roundtable podcast co-host. We'll get his thoughts on the Golden Grizzlies. And next week, we'll go over men's basketball at home against IU Indy and away against Detroit. And we'll talk about women's basketball's Wisconsin road trip against the Panthers and the Phoenix. My name is Giovanni Mosheri. Thank you for watching the GioMoShow, and we'll see you soon.